Oh yeah, all the time. It's it used to be, not so much anymore, but it used to be that I would dream about my space flight regularly. I would have dreams of floating through a very dark airlock full of spacesuits and hatches, which is actually something that happened while I was on the space station. So I would have that dream that was very close to reality many nights. That dream is less often these days, but I think about space all the time. Well, for me, space, as well as the other extreme travel I've done, whether it's the Titanic or deep ocean or Antarctica, hunting meteorites, or Africa or the Amazon, those are all great inspirations to the creative process, but rarely are directly used in a game in a way that's obvious. For example, what's fun in the reality of space is very small things like floating a blob of water in front of your face is endlessly fascinating. But on the ground or in a virtual game, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. And so it's tempting to think about making games based on those experiences. But the practical reality is that it's an inspiration for what is joyful. It is not a pattern for what to make a game after. Yeah, of course, my 2 weeks in space, which is, on the one hand, is a long time. 2 weeks is a long time to just float around like Superman. But it's only just a small taste. Even the astronauts who stay up for 6 months or longer all say that if they didn't have to come to the ground to reconnect with family and loved ones, that they would be even happier to stay in space. And the same thing's true for me. I would have loved to stay longer, and I sure hope I get a chance to go again. So my third job in my whole life is with my third company, also in my life, of course, which is called Portalarium. And each of those three companies was built for what I'll call one of the grand eras of gaming. My first company, Origin, was to create solo player games, which was all there were in games in the beginning. My second company, Destination Games, started to create massively multiplayer games. And now my third company, Portalarium, was created to tackle new social and mobile gaming, which I think is the third major era of games. And each of these major eras, the market has expanded by about 10 times. Ones of millions of players in solo player games, tens of millions of players in massively multiplayer games, and now we're about to cross hundreds of millions of players per game in the top social and mobile games. Well, who knows what it will be ultimately called, but Lord British's ultimate role-playing game, at least is a good working title, for what I'm really targeting. But it's unknown what the final title will be. I haven't talked much about Lord British's New Britannia or Lord British's ultimate role-playing game. Mostly because Portalarium has a sequence of products that we're putting out, starting with much simpler games, simple kind of arcade style or casino games, moving up into what I'll call building games, city builders or farm builders, or just things you can socially build, moving up to the true role-playing games. And so, but each of the smaller games is really developing the components that are required for the larger game. So to me, the thing that is essential about the new era is not the technological platform, because we will support them all. It'll be on iOS and Android and web and direct download on Apple and your Macintosh anyway and PCs. We'll be platform ubiquitous. But to me, what's really important is that it's either free or an impulse purchase, that you don't need to read instructions. You can just sit down and play it, and that you can feel successful within the game in a relatively short period of time. That being said, so those are the new things. The new things are free, easy, and quick to feel successful. The things that we're bringing into social games from things we've learned in the past are that it will be a deep, compelling intellectual property, that it will be a true living, breathing world akin to what people are used to seeing me create. I think the thing that makes my work special is the intellectual property crafting that goes into them. And if you look at the Ultima series, for example, some of them were on Earth. Some of them were in my Dungeons and Dragons world called Caesarea. Some of them were in this place called Britannia. And so I've already moved from world to world to world, even though they all are clearly Lord British's universe. Well, I hope and believe that both the players of my previous work as well as new players will appreciate the new game. And as evidence for that, I would point out that the solo player Ultima sold very well to ones of millions of people. Ultima Online sold to tens of millions of people. Obviously, most of the players who played Ultima Online had never played an Ultima before. So we now have a new market that's 10 times bigger. What's really important is to capture the 10 times bigger market. I hope I can bring, and I believe I can bring Ultima players along into the new game. But it's really important to get the new people. But here's why I believe I can bring the old people. If you look, for example, let's just use Ultima Online as a case study. Ultima Online, you had to buy it retail for $50. That means you had to drive to the store and get it. You also had to subscribe for $15 a month before you played the game. And you had to play for probably hours before you really saw if the game was fun or not. Okay? Those are some pretty big barriers to adoption. But the fact you could play with other real people was powerful enough to overcome those 4 very large barriers. So let's suppose I produced another version of Ultima Online at the same time. This one was free to play. You didn't have to go to the retail store. You could just download it. You didn't have to play for hours. You could, it was simple enough to where you could feel successful quite quickly. But otherwise, it was the same game. It was just a different distribution and monetization aspect. Well, I think there's no question that the free-to-play one would sell even better, would spread even faster, reach even more people. And so that's all I'm saying about this new era is that the features that have proven to be popular are not harmful to the sensibilities of what made the games great in the past. You can still make great games like the past as long as you respect the things that have made the new era so powerful. So I think one of the greatest new features that has been unearthed in the new social and mobile era, I'll broadly describe as asynchronous features to connect with your friends. In the previous MMO era, people had to play online at the exact same time in order to have any kind of shared experience. So people were compelled to meet up at 4 o'clock on Tuesday to play together, or they basically couldn't continue together because one person would advance faster than the other and they would no longer be able to play together. One of the great new features of social games is the people you're playing with are your real friends in the real world, not people you met online, but real friends. But one of the challenges with connecting to your real friends is your life schedules may not be in sync. You may not both be able to take off at the same time in the middle of the day to play 30 minutes together in a game. But there's been great new features unearthed about how to request help from or send help to your friends even when they're not online. And I think those are very powerful, and again, game makers from the past who are trying to evolve their games into the future can and should pay very close attention to making good use of these asynchronous features in addition to these synchronous features. Well, I think that that it's easy to underestimate the value of a virtual adventure. And what I mean by that is that let's think about things that people often do together. one of the most common activities that two friends in the real world will do together is go to the movies. But when you go to the movies, what you really do is you go sit in a theater side by side and you face a screen and you don't interact with each other at all until the end of the movie. You might talk about the movie beforehand, you might talk about the movie afterwards, but during the experience itself, you actually don't interact with each other at all. And yet, people don't generally like to go to the movies alone. You actually like to go to the movies with someone else to share that linear, non-interactive experience. It's much more powerful to share it with somebody else. And so that, if you then take that and now let's go to a virtual world game, playing an adventure game together, where you might not even be in the same room, you might be in another country. But I would argue that that time you spend together is considerably more valuable, more permanent, more lasting as an interpersonal relationship than going to see a movie together by all means. And so the connection that we are creating between people through these virtual experiences, the joy they feel, the shock and excitement, and some cases learning or challenging their belief systems, or the good games, good art challenge you or present or enlighten you in some way. And that's true if it's a good book, that's true if it's a good movie, and in my mind that's true if it's a good game. And so I find personally that my adventures in the real world and my creations in the real world and my personal adventures in virtual worlds and my personal creation of virtual worlds are very connected. Technology is an interesting tool that, back in the early EST days when there were no tools, you had to create all of your own tools. And so, even to put, dots on a screen, I had to build the art tools that were required to input that art and display that art. And so, now if you think about the movie industry as a case study, the first 20 or 30 years of the movie industry was chaotic from a technology standpoint. Then it stabilized for 50 years, but then 3D and stop motion and computer control kicked in, so it changed a bit, but it's stabilized now again for a while. So technology is really just a tool. And there are times when it's important or there's an opportunity to use a new tool, which just gives you more creative opportunities. But I don't think it's foundationally what's really important about the art form. If you think about, like let's say The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings was a great movie any way you cut it. It included some great technology. The virtual character Gollum is, phenomenally well done as a piece of technology. However, that is completely separate from the fact that the whole movie is just good art. And so making use of great tools can aid you towards making great art, but it is not what is the essential requirement of creating great art. There's a couple of key features that I think have remained elusive that, in my mind, to this day have never been done well. And one day I hope to do well, but I can't even predict that in the next games I will do well. And that is interacting with other NPCs. What I'll call broadly artificial intelligence within characters in the game. The ability for a game to understand a player, not just what they're saying or typing, but really understand the context of their role within the broad story and responding to you with a level of sophistication that isn't simplified, isn't dramatically simplified to make it really an A-B choice in a story, is something that I really would love to do in games. But I still think we're years away from the technology that will really allow virtual characters to really come to life in a way that allows the richness of experience that interacting with real people does. As I think about the state of the computer game industry, I think the most interesting aspect of it is to see how people are responding to each of these eras of games. When we first developed Ultima Online, lots of people didn't believe in it, especially before it was out. But even after it was a great success, still people didn't believe in the MMO era as the future. And right now we're at that same stage with social games. A lot of hardcore players look at it, and hardcore developers look at it and go, the games are too simple, the graphics are simple, the user interface is simple, the content is simple. It's not something I want to play, and it's not something I want to make. And I remember this so well from MMOs that I think it's fascinating to warn people, warn developers, and warn players that if you don't pay attention to this space, you will get left behind, just like happened in the MMO era. That the art form is evolving very quickly. If you're a creator or a consumer of this content, even if you don't see something there right now you want to partake of, just keep your eye on it, because it will catch up and surpass the state of the art quickly.